initially, Otis was like hard to take. And I'm sure people told you that.
I saw Otis for years. He was always a presence, but he was always this like, kind of like slow-moving, wisecracking, slightly gruff kind of person, you know what I'm saying? Who had a reputation for one-liners.
He's always a loud guy, always easy to find. Didn't know he was a poet. I just knew that he was a loud guy, and I knew that he liked the ladies.
I regarded him as somebody to stay away from.
He was troubled a lot about a lot of things, the ways of things, and why was this, and how can you say that.
Every once in a while, though, you did get a little bit full of Otis, so you had to get away from it and detox.
When Otis pissed you off, he knew that was intentional, because he probably had enough distant experience with that person to know that he needed to push a button for them to release an emotion, for him to then get into another level.
I feel he's a very complicated individual, very complicated human being, basically with a really good heart that had been very disappointed by people, by circumstance, by, events in his life.
He had a lot of things going against him. I don't think he had a very happy childhood. I heard he ran away when he was younger. He didn't get along with his father. His mother died when he was very young. He ended up in New York. I don't know what kind of experience he had then. I think he was like 14 when he went to New York. But he stayed there for a year, went back to North Carolina, and finally he did graduate from high school, but then immediately left. Went back up to New York. I think he was trying to, establish himself as an artist, poet, musician.
When he came to Philadelphia, he was followed by the press, and he was very public, and he cultivated the image of a poet.
It had to be 1973, even though I thought it was, well, he said it was 73. He and Beth were doing readings, some kind of informal reading on Penn's campus area. But I remember Otis doing this reading, and I remember Beth being there, and that's all I remember. It was right after Hendrix. So this tall, kind of Chambers Brothers, Jimi Hendrix kind of energy, like kind of blues energy, blues rock energy. That's what I remember about him. It's interesting that I didn't know until much later that he had these musical categories that he thought in.
Became a fixture in the Philadelphia poetry scene, so I got to know him more. And I saw him, he and Bill Talon and Marty Watt and Jeff Goldberg and a couple other poets formed a little cadre of poets.
The signature piece was boneless chicken.
Boneless chicken, boneless chicken. Chicken, boneless chicken. Boneless chicken, boneless chicken, boneless chicken, boneless chicken, boneless chicken, boneless chicken. Now boneless chicken, boneless chicken, boneless chicken.
Just from recordings that I've heard of my father and just things that he's told me, he did a lot of touring all around the country. And there was one place he used to hang out a lot back in the Bacchanal. And I guess he started bringing the band behind him after a while. I guess he figured he had this grand vision of this jazz band behind him and all.
He's the only poet I knew that really sounded like he was playing jazz when he spoke his poems. It really had a real rhythm, a real jazz-like feel to it. I didn't know till later when he actually talked about that was part of his drive, was to kind of have a jazz-like feel to his poetry.
He gave me a tape of him performing, and I listened to it. And wow, the guy just was, the words were just coming, and it was really entertaining, and you could see this guy has an awful lot of talent. I started to question, well, what's he doing here with us? Because the guy was obviously intelligent, real intelligent. Not that our parking attendants aren't intelligent, But this guy just had so much. He was just seemed to be a step above.
People begun to ask him to write for them, for like funerals, the people that he was close to, he knew, and weddings.
I must say that I didn't know I was in the presence of greatness, and I don't say that to be facetious or anything. I knew that Otis was a poet, but I didn't know how well known he was, or that he was, over in New York doing his poetry. I didn't know any of that.
All those beat poets, post-beat poets that he hung out with in New York, they all had a similar mindset. They all kind of felt like Buddhists, whether they were Buddhists or not. And he would often make those kind of comparisons about how the things that he learned from his association with those people that he considered the great ones, were all consistent with what he believed, after years of practicing Buddhism, that, basically how to treat people, how to treat people, how not to preconceive people, to pigeonhole people, to limit people, those types of things. And I think those are things that I remember from conversations with Otis about his experiences with everybody, the people at the parking garage, and the great writers of the New York literary set.
He went through a lot of soul searching himself, trying to change his karma, as they would say.
That's the change I saw, was his Buddha nature revealing itself in a very profound way. And yet he didn't change. And that's the idea. You get this idea sometimes that you're going to become this wonderful personality and people will love you every minute because you're developing your Buddha nature. You don't really change who you are. You just become the Buddha of who you are. And he showed that in his own way.
And little by little, he didn't care how he had to, get it to you. He eventually revealed himself to be like this great person that nobody knew was inside all of these other things that made up Otis. But he didn't lose any of that either. So it wasn't like he became like this, real refined kind of guy. He was just up this.
When Lisa fell ill with cancer, he really took great compassion on all the members who had been ill. He would visit Richard Zonick, of which you probably heard. As a result of all of that, I grew to have tremendous respect for him, because after his brief encounter with cancer, which was the year before Lisa had hers, he had a tremendous change in attitude. He had part of his stomach removed. He became physically a different person. He also became emotionally a very different person.
I saw him get weaker and weaker. I knew that he was gonna. I think I knew when he was going through he said, I'm going to get surgery. I realized he was very sick. I didn't realize that he was terminal.
He never said anything.
Never. Not once.
He was very positive about everything that was happening to him. And not real concerned about the cancer because he felt like he was going to fight it and overcome it.
No, he wasn't really sick. He was working. He was working all the time. It was his determination. I'm going to get up and go to work. And one day I asked him, he was just looked so really bad. I said, well, what would you do if I didn't take you to work? He said, I'll call the police. They'll take me. I'll tell them my situation. They'll take me to work. I said, okay.
He knew the end was near. And I think what Otis, I know what Otis really wanted was not to try to find some key to immortality or some magic potion or some miraculous cure or whatever. I think Otis now was reaching out to find out how he could die with dignity.
He had a different attitude. There was something changed about him. It was like he wanted to live, and he was just going after life with everything that he had.
And his mission was to just encourage all the people he could, so that they would at least have a better day. You know.
This was on one day. We would do sometimes 3 or 4 things. You know, the meeting at his home, then visit Richard, and then 1 or 2 other visits. On that particular day, we visited the travel agency on Chestnut Street and James Black in the hospital that same day. You know, and that was not unusual. And Otis was only recently out of the hospital himself, and was, as I understand now, in constant pain. But he was on such a mission that he insisted that he make these stops on a given day. You know.
Then I had Otis and Gary kind of watching over me. I was very fortunate to have them.
It was just remarkable to know a person like this. I'm sure I'd never know another person like this. I would never know anybody else like Otis.
I could tell, I know from princes to paupers, I know people all over the world. He is the most unique person that I've met.
It's been a privilege to have been connected to Otis, and I learned a lot from Otis. I learned an awful lot from Otis.
Every once in a while you meet a person that somehow touches you and you don't know why or how. It's a feeling more than anything that anybody can put into words. His travels through life could also help me. I could learn from him how to improve my life and make my life better.
I just loved the way he lived his life, like every minute. I mean, I don't want to live like him. I want to live the way he lived, right? Every minute he lived it, you know, and that's why I don't miss him. I mean, that's why I don't mourn him, because, yeah, he was like, I was like, okay, he won. He definitely won. You know?
Bonus chicken I become. My basis appetite, tempting, transformed to a combination of my every colossal delight. Garnished with long, steel pipe, tail glass, and all-American hammer, I am staying long tongue like a calf with salt in his grass. The last time this all-American boy was seen with the lawnmower, the FBI, Ephraim Jimless Jr., J. Edgar Hoover, came in to investigate the grass. A choppy liver on the high, moving backwards at 100 miles per hour. I still come up cold turkey. Every time I think, you think, we think, those thoughts. Skinless chicken I become when I call you on the phone. And stuffed chicken when you ain't at home. Maybe on a flagpole is where I belong. I simply want to tie you to the strip steak, my sweet potato, and enjoy every tender morsel. That was my dish.